Thinking of buying or selling a home in Calgary, or maybe you're looking to relocate into one of the nicest neighborhoods in the city? Welcome to Calgary's Lake communities, where every day feels like a getaway. My name is Ryan Gillard at Real Broker, your Calgary realtor, and in this video, I'll take you through a tour of all of Calgary's lake communities and give you all the pros and the cons. All right, let's get into it. All right, so I'll start off in the northwest and I'll work my way around the city in a clockwise direction. So in the northwest, there's actually only one lake community, and that's Arbour Lake, a very popular neighborhood. And Arbour Lake has a lot going for it. It's got easy access roads in and out of this part of Calgary. I would say Northwest Calgary is the easiest part of the city to drive around in. So around Arbour Lake, you've got Crowchild Trail, John Laurie, Sarcee, Shaganappy Trail, you've got the Ring Road, and you also have a nearby C train stop. So it's got excellent access routes in and out of the neighborhood. You've also got easy access to Crowfoot Crossing. This is the biggest mall in the Northwest, and this is kind of at the southern and eastern border of Arbour Lake. It's a huge shopping complex, it's got everything in there, and this is walking distance from many parts of Arbour Lake. You've also got some popular schools in this neighborhood. And I'll just show you some of the market stats in Arbour Lake. And before I do that, one thing I missed is that in Arbour Lake, you've also got excellent views of the Rocky Mountains as well. That's definitely a major pro of that neighborhood. And so for market stats, Arbour Lake is not the most expensive neighborhood in the Northwest, but it's not the cheapest. It's probably somewhere in between. And so for detached properties, the average price about $775, duplexes $627, row houses $404, and apartments $347. And the actual neighborhood has a pretty good mix of all of these properties. It's not all single family homes. It's got everything in this part of town. Now, there's not too many things to dislike about Arbour Lake, but one thing I will point out, and this is just my preference, that I don't like the pastel colors or the vinyl siding. This area has a lot of that, just the area that it was built, and it's just not my preference, but it's still a fine neighborhood. And before moving on, I should have done this earlier. So Arbour Lake on the map, if you're curious, is in the deep northwest part of the city. So I'm just trying to zoom out here. So obviously here's Calgary. Deep northwest is Arbour Lake. You can see this little lake right here. Of all of the lakes in Calgary, I think Arbour Lake is the smallest one. And so moving along here, let's go all the way into the northeast now. So we're spinning all the way over here to Coral Springs, and that's this neighborhood right here. Now you can see other lakes around here and some over here. These are mostly like water features and ponds. Coral Springs is the only lake community in the Northeast that has like its own private beach and docks and stuff like that. And so it's not a very big neighborhood, it's just this section right over here. So it's a smaller neighborhoods and one of the more upscale neighborhoods in the Northeast. If you're familiar with Calgary, the Northeast always has a lot of stigma with it, where I get it all the time with buyers. I want to buy a home for $500,000 anywhere but the Northeast. I get that nonstop. But there are some nice communities in the Northeast, and Coral Springs is one of them. And I'll just touch on some of the nice features about Coral Springs. So again, it's the only lake community in the Northeast. I would say it's a very family-oriented neighborhood. It's got lots of parks, playgrounds, and green spaces along with the lake. It is one of the most culturally diverse neighborhoods in Calgary. There's a bit of everything in Coral Springs. I find it quiet and safe. It's got good schools, and I would say it's a bit more affordable compared to other lake communities in Calgary. And in terms of some of the negatives, so I already mentioned, obviously, it has the Northeast stigma, but as you can see from this home right here, where are we? There are some expensive homes in the Northeast. This one sold in May, I believe, for $1.408 million. Now, that's a huge price in Calgary, and you can see why. So it's a very nice looking property. And so it's right on the actual lake. You can see some good lake shots over here. And again, this is in the Northeast that has a lot of the stigma with it, but again, there are some very nice homes and communities in the Northeast as well. And the last point here about Coral Springs, I believe it's all detached properties, so no other like condos, townhouses, and duplex as far as I know. And the average price right now is $754,700, so a little bit less than Arbour Lake. But I'm still a bit shocked by that price. Our prices in Calgary have really gone up the last couple of years. So $754, fairly big price. As you can see, you're up 15.7% year over year. Now, this video is specifically about the lake communities in Calgary, but if you go 10 kilometers east of Calgary, you come across the town of Chestermere, and this is actually the biggest lake around the Calgary area. And if you are curious about this neighborhood, I did a video about a week or so back, the pros and cons of living in Chestermere, and you can find that video and view it by clicking this link right here. So from Coral Springs, right over here, you can see Chestermere Lake right over here. You can see it's quite large. And continuing south, we'll go all the way down to the deep south part of Calgary. I actually went too far here. And South Calgary is where most of the lake communities are. And if I zoom in here, we'll come to Mahogany. Now, this might be the most popular lake community at the moment in Calgary. And so in Mahogany, this is the actual lake right here. And I believe this over here is more like a pond and some water features. Now, this is one of the most master planned communities in Calgary, and you can tell just by the design of the roads and the layouts, like just how thought out it was. And there are plenty of good things to talk about Mahogany. And so some of the pros, so it's got the lake lifestyle, obviously. You've got 2 beaches, swimming, fishing, kayaking, skating in the wintertime. There's a beach club, and it's just modern and a newer development. Most of the properties here are, I'd say, within the last 5 years to 10 years, and there's even some new parts to it as well. So it's not a very old community. Everything is pretty new. You've got extensive walking and biking trails, parks, playgrounds, wetland areas. Yeah, in the central part of it, there's like a little promenade area with a village-type market called the Westman Village. You got shops, cafes, restaurants, some fancy restaurants as well. Definitely very walkable. It's very family-friendly. Lots of schools around the neighborhood, childcare options, community events. You've got easy access to Seaton, which is a huge shopping center in the south part of Calgary, so that's driving distance. You've also got easy access to the South Health Campus. That's the biggest hospital in the south part of Calgary, as far as I know. There's a movie theater down there now. Just lots of development happening in this part of Calgary. Now, there are some negatives with Mahogany, and the first one is just the distance from downtown. It's far away from downtown. There's no easy way to put it. So if you want to live in the inner city and be close to downtown, this is probably not the right neighborhood for you. It's not cheap by any means. Mahogany can be quite pricey, so I'll pull up the market data here. So the average price in the neighborhood is $608,800. That is a bit deceiving, though, because it has all different product types. But just for single-family homes, average price is $833,000. So more expensive than Arbour Lake and Coral Springs. Lots of duplexes here, $582,600. Townhouses, $500,000 now for a townhouse. It's getting pricey in Calgary. That's up 11% over last year. And apartments, $378,100. And I'll show you, you can just kind of see here, some of the homes on this island can be very pricey. And this one, I believe it sold over $3 million for this island property. See, pretty nice looking home. And back to some of the negatives, again, higher housing costs. A big one here is that the C train doesn't come to this area yet. It's a work in progress. I believe it's going as far as Shepherd in the first stage. Then eventually it will go to the Seaton area, which is not that far from Mahogany. But the deep south east is still struggling with getting the C train access, but it is an ongoing project. And the last thing that you might dislike about Mahogany is there are parts of it where it's an active construction zone still. South Calgary is developing rapidly, and I've got a video specifically on this as well called the New Communities in Calgary, which you can find by clicking this link right here. And there's all sorts of new areas around the Mahogany part of town. All right, moving along west, we come across the neighborhood of Auburn Bay right over here. So we're not going far. So this is Mahogany right here. Auburn Bay is just next door. So they're kind of like twins, but there are some key differences. And the big ones, I would say, so everything that I said about Mahogany, it kind of applies to Auburn Bay in terms of the general location, but there are some differences in the area. So Auburn Bay is a bit older than Mahogany, not by that much, but it is older. It's not quite as expensive, and there's less amenities and infrastructure in the Auburn Bay area. So in Mahogany, you've got the Westman Village over here. There's lots of condo developments. There's like the promenade area, walking paths. There's just a lot more going on in the Mahogany area compared to Auburn Bay. Like when you're driving around Auburn Bay, it just feels like a residential area with the lake, whereas Mahogany's got it has a bit more going on for it, I would say. One good thing about Auburn Bay, though, is that if you just go south of it, this is the Seaton area I mentioned earlier. Lots of shopping, and you have the YMCA, you've got some schools, you have the Alberta Health Campus. So that's not far from Mahogany, but it's just a bit closer to the Auburn Bay area. But other than that, they are quite similar. It's just one is cheaper with less infrastructure, I would say. And if we pull up the stats here, you can see the pricing. So the average price in Auburn Bay is $650 across all product types. For detached homes, $824,100. I thought this was like $870-ish for Mahogany, so it is a bit cheaper. For duplexes, $532,800. For row houses, $474. I believe this was over $500 for Mahogany, and for apartments, $386,500. So again, they are quite similar. Just one's got more amenities, and it's a bit newer. And moving west from Auburn Bay, northwest actually, we'll cross over the ring road and come across the neighborhood of McKenzie Lake. Not to be confused with McKenzie Town, which is this neighborhood over here. And McKenzie Lake is one of the original lake communities in Calgary. So this neighborhood is a lot older compared to Auburn Bay and Mahogany. I believe there were homes being developed here in the 80s. My grandma used to live actually in McKenna Crescent down here, so I'm quite familiar with this neighborhood, having spent a lot of time here. And I think it's one of the best in the southeast. And one of the key differences between McKenzie Lake and the other ones that we've covered is it's older and it's more mature. So you see the big trees, well-developed green spaces. As for the lake itself, the lake is not huge. It's maybe the same size as Coral Springs or Arbour Lake. But it's definitely a very nice neighborhood, very family-friendly, some good schools in this neighborhood. Again, the mature trees. You've got easy access roads in and out of here. So you got the Deerfoot Trail right over here. McKenzie Lake Boulevard can connect into Cranston, which can connect into the Seaton shopping area I've already covered. And again, you've got the Deerfoot Trail that connects to the Ring Road as well. So it's an easy neighborhood to get in and out of. Now, in terms of amenities in McKenzie Lake, there's actually not too many in the neighborhood itself, compared to like Mahogany, where you got that town center kind of feeling. McKenzie Lake is primarily just residential, but there is a giant shopping center close by the northern part of the neighborhood on 130th Avenue. This section over here has got pretty much everything you could think of in terms of shopping, and that's just a short little commute from McKenzie Lake. And in terms of real estate pricing, not as expensive as Auburn Bay or Mahogany. Average price about $746,500 for a detached property. Now, I thought that McKenzie Lake was all single-family homes, but I guess there are some townhouses here as well. And their average price is $430,500, but there's not many. I think it's primarily mostly single-family homes. And one last thing that I should have mentioned earlier. So not only is it a lake community, you've also got the river right here, and a lot of the homes that are on this ridge have excellent views of the river and the mountains in the distance. So it's got a bit of everything. All right, next up, and moving further west, is Lake Chaparral. Now, before I get into it, I find that you can lump these areas together. Like Auburn Bay and Mahogany are kind of similar. McKenzie Lake is kind of off on its own. And then these three areas, Lake Chaparral, Sundance, and Midnapore, you can kind of lump them together. They're kind of similar. But I'll start here with Lake Chaparral first, and I'll zoom out so you can kind of see where we're at. So here's the downtown, and Lake Chaparral is way down here at the southern end of the city. So that's one of the cons, obviously, is that it's just far away from downtown. But it's a very nice neighborhood, and I'm just trying to zoom in here. My screen is a bit slow here while I'm recording. There's not as much going on with Lake Chaparral as compared to like Mahogany. There's less amenities in this area. Like it's primarily just residential properties with the lake. It is an older neighborhood compared to like Auburn Bay and Mahogany, maybe around the same age as McKenzie Lake. So if you're a buyer, you're going to have to maybe renovate the property or update it if you're looking to move into this neighborhood. So it's a bit older, very residential, lots of good schools, parks, obviously the lake access as well. It's not a master plan community like Mahogany is, where they have like the town square area. So a bit more of a simple neighborhood compared to the others. And so in terms of amenities in the actual neighborhood, there's not many, but there's lots of amenities nearby. So if we just cross over the Ring Road, this giant section right over here that you can see, this is all shopping. So there's everything that you could possibly want in this shopping area. So that's easy access, just maybe a 5-minute drive from Lake Chaparral. And it's not super expensive, Lake Chaparral. I'll pull up the stats here so they can see it. So where are we here? So not as expensive as some other areas that we've covered. So the average price of a detached home is $760,400. For duplexes, it's $611,400. 400. Row houses $514, and apartments $344. So Lake Chaparral is an area that you'll see a bunch of different product types as well. And pricing is up 10.4% year over year. And not as expensive as other areas, but there are definitely some expensive homes here. Like this one here sold, I think it was over $2 million. So you can see the lake access here, nice little hot tub as well. And this one, I believe, actually sold for $2.9 million. So this is one of the rare ones in Lake Chaparral. But definitely a very nice property and nice neighborhoods. And we'll move on to Sundance next. And heading north from Lake Chaparral, right here, we come across the neighborhood of Sundance, right over here. Now, they're kind of similar, Sundance and Chaparral, but there are some key differences. I would say that Sundance is quite a bit older compared to Lake Chaparral. You've got better access to Fish Creek Park, which is this section right here. Actually, if I zoom out, you can see it better. This is a giant park that stretches through a good chunk of South Calgary, all the way from the outskirts of the city, all the way down here, and this section, and all up here. One of the biggest parks in Canada, I'd imagine. And Sundance, you've got easy access to Fish Creek. You've also got easy access to the mall I already talked about earlier, the Shaughnessy Shopping Centre. And one thing that people always mention about Sundance, what they like the most about it, is there's a ton of schools here. So it's very family friendly, lots of excellent schools. And if you just pull up Sundance on Wikipedia, there's like 5 or 6 schools here. So there's Fish Creek Elementary School, Sundance Elementary School. Our elementary, you've got junior high, Mid-Sun Junior High, and there's a high school, Centennial. And there's also a Catholic school, Father James Wellahan School. I could be butchering that name. And that's something that always pops up when you talk to someone from Sundance, is they just love all the schooling in the neighborhood. And in terms of pricing, Sundance is easy. It's all single-family detached homes, as far as I know, and the average price about $745,500. So kind of similar to Midnapore and McKenzie Lake in terms of pricing. And moving along, let's talk about Midnapore. All right, moving along. So we've got Sundance right here. Just north of Sundance is Midnapore, this section right over here. Kind of similar, but there are some key differences. And I'm going to pull up my satellite view here so you can see it a bit better. So once upon a time, Midnapore used to be its own town until Calgary kind of took it over. So it's got kind of like a half commercial vibe, which you can see over here, along with the residential vibe over here. So it's got the commercial aspect, which differs from Sundance, which is primarily just residential. So another key difference between Midnapore and Sundance is that Midnapore is probably like in the 70s era, whereas Sundance is from the 80s. So it is a bit older, a bit more commercial, and it's cheaper as well. So if I pull up the market stats here, you can see it a bit better. So Midnapore, average price here is $652,100. Compared to Sundance, I think it was like $740-ish, I believe. And there's more product types in this in Midnapore compared to Sundance. You've got the full range. You've got duplexes, average price $482, row houses $499, and apartments for $300,000. So it's a bit cheaper. It's half commercial, and it's a bit closer to Calgary as well, being further north. And that's a good rundown of Midnapore. I kind of lump them in together, to be honest. Sundance and Midnapore, they're not far apart, and they are kind of similar, just with a few differences. All right, just about done here. And next up, if we go north of Fish Creek Park, right here, we come across Lake Bonavista, this neighborhood right here. Now, of all the lake communities that we've covered, I would say this one is probably my favorite one. It has a lot going on for it. So I'd also say it's probably the most expensive one as well. So it has 2 lakes in the neighborhood, excellent locations. You've got McLeod Trail on the west side of the neighborhood, Anderson on the north side, easy access to Bow Bottom Trail, to Deerfoot Trail, easy access to South Centre Mall. This is one of the bigger malls in Calgary. You've got easy access to a golf course, a few golf courses. You've got Maple Ridge over here, and you've also got Willow Park Golf and Country Club over here. And there's also a few others to the west, like the Kenny Meadows Golf Course. So lots of pros living in Lake Bonavista. You got easy access to 2 lakes. It's a very established community. It's probably the oldest one of the lake communities that we've covered. Excellent schools in this neighborhood. There's quite a few of them. Again, easy access to South Center Mall, restaurants and recreational facilities, and again, easy access to the Cloud Trail. There's public transit options as well, including the C train. And the only negative with Lake Bonavista, I would say, is probably, some of the homes are kind of old now. They have to be updated. But that's about it. There's not much to complain about in terms of living in Lake Bonavista. And in terms of the real estate prices, it is the most expensive one of the areas that we've covered on average. So the total residential price, $756. This is a bit misleading though, because this area is mostly detached homes, but there's a pocket of apartments which are dragging down this average. But for most detached homes, the average price now is about $1.014 million. Quite expensive, up 10.6% year over year. And I'll just show you, so here's the lake. You got some beautiful properties surrounding it. And I'll take a look at this one. This one was sold, I think it was over $3 million. So it can get quite pricey in here. And I'll just show you some of the views, backyard dock. Stunning property. Yeah, you can't really get better than Lake Bonavista. All right, last up. So from Lake Bonavista over here, if we just go north a little bit, we come across the Reservoir Area over here. Now, this is a bit different in that you can't swim in the reservoir and there's no beaches. It's strictly off limits for that. But you can. There is some sailboats that come on the reservoir, but that's about it. And there are a couple neighborhoods to talk about here. So there's Bayview, this section right over here. Bayview, Eagle Ridge, and I'd say Lakeview Village are the prominent neighborhoods that have easy access to the reservoir. And so I'll just cover Bayview. So this is a very small neighborhood, section right over here. Very exclusive, very expensive, good central location, and it's pricey. The average price here is about $1.5 million, and you can get yourself into multi-million-dollar homes in the Bayview area. Same thing with Eagle Ridge, same thing with Lakeview Village over here. And again, very exclusive, very pricey. And one last thing to mention, so I covered the lake communities, but I didn't mention too much about the river. So if you want to live by some water and maybe you want to be in a different part of the city, we do have the Bow River that runs, you can see it right here, my mouse pointer, runs right through the city from the northwest into the central part and then into the deep south. So that's the Bow River, and we also have the Elbow River that kind of snakes its way from the reservoir all the way into the downtown where it meets up with the Bow River. So there are lots of neighborhoods with easy river access as well. All right, there you have it. That's my rundown of the lake communities in Calgary. Now, again, if you are thinking of buying, selling, or relocating to the Calgary area, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. I'd love to help you out. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.